Today I'm going over 15 books that I've read in the last several weeks. So grab a cup of something and let's dive in. Hey there, friends. Welcome back. If you are new here, my name is Melissa. I am the dyer behind Rising Tide Fiber Company. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. In the last few weeks, I have finished 15 books. I'd say probably in about the last 3 weeks or so. Most have been audiobooks, but I did want to talk about and let you know what my thoughts were. The first book, I did do this one in tandem, meaning I listened to it and I worked through the hard copy. It is Forget Me Not by Stacy Willingham. She is the same author who wrote A Flicker in the Dark. This is Number one, it is a 5-star read for me. I loved this. This is the story of two sisters, and I am a sister to a sister. So I am always sucked into a really good story about sisters. And for this one, it is a thriller. It takes place in South Carolina, so southern, I want to say coastal town. Essentially, just imagine returning home only to find out that there are secrets that are buried really deep in regards to the disappearance of your older sister. And we are following the story of Claire. Her sister disappears 2 decades earlier. And so at the time, blood is found in a car. Her sister's body was never found, but someone does go to, there is someone suspected to have done it. And she is drawn back to her hometown due to a family crisis. And she takes a seasonal job at a local farm, thinking, she'll have a nice, somewhat easy breezy summer. And she unearths an old diary that really takes some of the farm's history and secrets, and it is tied to her own. So this was extremely fast-paced, which I love a fast-paced thriller. It is not very long. It is 322 pages. So you can get through this one really quickly. Thoroughly enjoyed this one. The next book is Morbidly Yours by Ivy Banks. For me, this was only a 3-star read for me. I think this is the first introduction to this author for me, and I really wanted to love this one, but there was something about the author's writing that I just couldn't get into. So I won't be continuing this series. I may try a different book by this author that's not part of this particular series. In this one, we're following Calum, and he is this really shy mortician. It takes place in Ireland, and he's the type of guy that would rather avoid people pretty much at all costs than even consider planning a first date. So he's got this problem. His grandfather has passed away, and in the will, it says that he has to be married by the time he's 35 to inherit the funeral home that he has worked at and was, built by his grandfather, and he wants this beloved funeral home. But he's painfully shy, so he doesn't know how he's going to accomplish this. So then on the other side of things, we have Lark. She is this really vivacious Texan who has found herself in Ireland. She relocates there for this fresh start. And when she moves there, kind of sight unseen, she never expected to live next door to a funeral home. And Lark finds out about Caleb's dilemma of having to find a bride, and she offers to help him find the one. And it starts as a project of necessity. So we've got this close proximity, kind of friends to lovers. It was just okay. Again, I listened to it. Maybe I would have felt differently had I actually read it. But again, I'm wondering if I just need to try a different book by this author before saying this author just isn't for me. The next book I dove into was Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. Now, T. Kingfisher does tend to be a little bit hit or miss. I would say mostly hits for me. There's only you're going to see throughout, I've got a couple more T. Kingfisher books. This one I loved. This was a 4-star read for me. I will probably continue with this series. I want to say there is 4 books in this series, and every book deals with a different character, so we're not following the same couple. This is a romantic fantasy, so a romantasy. It has very witty banter, and we're following Stephen, and Stephen is a paladin, and his god has died. And so we get a lot of his inner monologue, and he is barely holding himself together. He really is kind of lost, and he stumbles across Grace in an alley. She's being chased by some really unsavory men, and he kind of intervenes, and she fakes like making out with him, and he ends up saving her. And she is a perfumer, and she has a bit of a dangerous past. He's not fully aware of that in the beginning. And so there is a little bit of political intrigue. There's murder involved, but these two characters end up having a really beautiful growing connection between them. And it's almost, to me, it felt like they kind of save each other. So it's very witty. It's almost, to me, it felt like a really tender story, really authentic. There's a lot of heart. Stephen has a really big heart. So I was really drawn into this story. So again, I gave it 4 stars because there are elements like I don't always care about murder mysteries. So there were elements of it that maybe aren't my favorite, but overall, the story is just really beautiful, and I really enjoyed that one. One of the other books by T. Kingfisher that I read was her latest, and it's Hemlock and Silver. This was a 4-star read for me. This is another book that I actually had an advanced audio copy of this, but the audio copy I got right around the same time as the book, so I was able to kind of tag team this one because I want to say Book of the Month then sent us this book before it was actually out to the general public. Hemlock and Silver is a darker, more inventive version of Snow White. So the author is really taking a story that's familiar to most of us and turning it into something really compelling and original. I was really surprised by the inventiveness of this. And one of the things that really stood out to me about this particular novel was our main character. So we are following a healer, Anja. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I'm getting names right. Yes. And she is a healer who regularly drinks poison, and that's her job. And she's on this quest to try and cure things that are normally considered incurable. And she is summoned by the king to try and save Princess Snow. And the reason is because Princess Snow's mysterious illness resists all these remedies. And so it turns out Anja's going to uncover this magical mirror world and all these truths about the royal family. This one also has a talking cat in the story, which is, I always feel like a pet when we know the thoughts of one of the animals or the pets in the story. It's always so fun. It's just a fun element added. But back to Anja. She was a standout main character for me because this version of her, she's strong, she's independent, she's intelligent, she's in her 30s. So we're not talking about someone in their early 20s that just doesn't really have any experience in life. So it was, for me, it was really refreshing to see the heroine of a fairy tale retelling who isn't a very young woman, but one that actually has some life experience and some resilience in life. And so there's a lot of magic and danger and just kind of creepy, shadowy type things going on in this book, and you really start to root for her. And so this is a really rich, immersive story. And just like Paladin's Grace, when I talked about that one being really witty, this one has a lot of dry humor and moments that have a lot of emotional depth, just like Paladin's Grace did. And so if you like the classic elements of Snow White, I think this reimagined version you're going to really like, because I feel like the author is really clever and has caused some creepiness, and actually makes some of it feel a little bit unsettling, but not unsettling that you feel awful, but unsettling in some of the best ways. So I highly recommend this one if you like fairy tale retellings. I really, really enjoyed this one. The next book I read is Immortal by Sue Lynn Tan. I love this author. I love her Celestial series, Daughter of a Moon Goddess. I thought that was a beautiful book and have read all the books in the series. I thought this book, Immortal, was tied into that, but it looks like it is. Goodreads says it's part of the Celestial Kingdom, but I don't think that it's the same world. If it is, it's loosely connected. But I think I might love this story more than I loved Daughter of a Moon Goddess, and I loved that book. So in this one, we're following Lien, and she is heir to her country, and she knows that someday she is going to have to ascend to the throne and then renew her kingdom's pledge to serve the immortals who had once protected them from this vicious enemy. But she's poisoned, and she is thrusted into this deadly web of gods, immortals, and betrayal. Her grandfather ends up dying, and she becomes queen, and she vows to break her kingdom's obligations to these immortals and protect her people herself. But that means that she might have to form this really fragile alliance with the god of war, someone that she grew up being told she needed to fear. And so there's a lot of secrets that are going to unravel in the story, and there are some darker forces at play, and she ends up having to risk a lot because it's a romantasy. One of those things that she's going to risk is her heart. So this was a beautiful audiobook. So if you don't do well with physically reading fantasy, but you can immerse yourself in it from an auditory standpoint, I would absolutely do it with this one. So the next book that I read was There's Pumpkin About You by Athena Carstairs. This was an advanced reader's copy for me. So this one was a 4-star read for me. And we're following a small town party planner, and she's determined to throw her best friend this sort of large Thanksgiving-ish sized, like 30th birthday party. And she thinks this is going to be the thing that puts her party planning business on the map locally. And she thinks in order to pull it off, she's going to use this pumpkin farm. The problem is the pumpkin farm is owned by a rather grumpy guy. And so there's going to be a lot of personality clashes. The barn has to be repaired in order for her to do this. The farm is kind of hanging on by a thread from a financial standpoint. This is a really charming, like, small town contemporary romance. And it is, grumpy meets sunshine. And so if you're looking for cozy fall vibes, this has it. I'm just looking at my notes. What I really appreciated about this book is Gus, the owner of the farm. He actually owns it with his brothers, but his brothers have other jobs, so he's really running it. And Gus is a neurodivergent male. So for me, I really appreciated the representation of a neurodivergent male character lead versus the female character that we tend to have seen in a lot of contemporary romances in the last several years. So having the male as the neurodivergent lead, it's not seen as often. So I really appreciated that. I think it was a refreshing and unique perspective. And the author does preface the story by saying, hey, this is not representative of all neurodivergent folks, but this is what I'm familiar with based on, I think, someone in her life. So it's subtle, but it's there. And so I think the author did a really great job of not only balancing some of that emotional depth, but also those really cozy seasonal vibes. And this romance, to me, felt more authentic. It is a more sweet romance. There is good chemistry between our two main characters, and I felt like the characters, there was really some thoughtful development throughout the story. So again, 4-star read for me, and if you're looking for a fun seasonal romance, this might be the one for you. The next book that I listened to was Beartown by Fredrik Backman. This is the first in a 3-book series. And I actually have a couple more of his novels in today's review. This was a 5-star listen for me. It is a really powerful, slow burning story. And it's the story of a small town that is obsessed with hockey and raising all the boys are raised playing hockey. The town was established by, grandfathers and great grandfathers who had essentially built like an ice rink in the middle of the woods. So what happens is we have certain key youth on the team, and there is this really bright hope that they are going to win this championship game. But shortly before this game, there is a act of violence that happens, and we spend the rest of the book basically watching loyalties become tested. We see how silence gets used as a weapon. And so this book really explored the sense of community and how that can be fractured, whether by acts of violence, by people's individual ambition or lack thereof, um, what people are willing to sort of overlook in order to protect what they love or who they love. So for me, this was a really gritty, emotional book, but also it felt unflinchingly honest about how communities, particularly small communities, kind of exist. This is a really, a really kind of haunting book. I would encourage you to um, read trigger warnings in advance. Like if you log on to Storygraph, if there are certain topics that make you uncomfortable, particularly in this instance, um, sexual violence. So it is not on the page graphic, but just it is spelled out enough that you have a general understanding of what happens so that the story can proceed forward. But it is not on the page graphic at all. But I I am definitely going to finish this series. We'll find out in a little bit my thoughts on the second one. But if you have been thinking about starting this series, I would not hesitate. This was a great book. The next book that I read was The Lion Women of Tehran. This was a 5-star read for me. I've had a lot of those this go round, and I can't say I'm mad about it. This is the same author who wrote The Stationery Shop. So if you've read that book, then you have a taste of this author's writing. I will say this is another novel that I kind of tag teamed with the audio of it, and it did not disappoint. This is the story of a lifelong friendship between two women, Ellie and Hama, and they come from two very different walks of life. And we're basically starting out in 1950 Tehran. And so if you don't know anything about that time period in Iran, it was really tumultuous from a political um, standpoint. And I don't feel like you have to be well versed in the politics of it. The story will carry you through that enough for you to understand the basics. And so these two women become lifelong friends, though there are lots of things about the politics of the country during that time that will try to sever their relationship. Their bond gets tested not just by loss, but by choices that they make and betrayal. There is what some would say a big act of betrayal in here. And so while Ellie is seeking comfort and stability, Hamas is choosing defiance and justice. So their stories are going to diverge and then recollide again later in life. And the story kind of revolves around this idea of being lion women. And so if you like stories about friendship, identity, this this is a really good book, and I would recommend it to just about anyone who loves a good friendship story. The next story that I listened to was Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. This is almost like a novella short story. This one, it is another fairy tale retelling. I will say for this one, it was a 3-star read for me. I could take it or leave it. Like, this one did not suck me in like Hemlock and Silver did. This one is the story of Sleeping Beauty, but it's been kind of flipped a little bit. In this one, we're meeting Toadling, who is this fairy changeling, and she's been raised by swamp spirits, and she's been guarding a hidden tower for centuries, and it's burrowed under vines and thorns. And her role is to watch over a sleeping princess everyone thought needed rescuing. And so then Hamlin enters the picture, and Hamlin is this knight that's really quite gentle, really compassionate. Um, so he's not that stereotypical, like, heroic, I'm going to save the day kind of knight. And so this story really kind of focused on guilt, loneliness, unexpected friendship, and really the concept or the idea of choosing what kind of guardian or what kind of self you want to be, or the self you want to become. So it's a short but mighty story. It just didn't suck me in like Hemlock and Silver. The next book I read, I actually listened to this one. This is a novella. I think the book itself is only 65 pages. It's called The Deal of a Lifetime by Fredrik Backman. So very short, sweet novella. It's a father-son story, and they're seeing each other for the first time in years. And the father wants to share a story with his son before it's too late. And he shares this story about this courageous little girl who is lying in a hospital bed, and she's a really smart kid. And she knows that she's not going to be able to beat her cancer just by drawing with her crayons all day. But she does it because it seems to make the adults around her happy. So she just keeps doing it. And so the father is continuing to talk about this little girl, and he also is revealing things about himself to his son. And he's, talking about the triumphs he's had in businesses, what he feels are his failures as a parent, what he regrets, and his hopes for the future. And so it's a really cold winter's night. I think it almost feels atmospheric, like holiday, Christmas holiday time. And he wants to do something remarkable to change the destiny for this little girl. But before he can make the deal of a lifetime, he has to find out what his own life has actually been worth. So this book, I think, is meant to remind us that life is fleeting. It's a gift. So it's kind of a story about love, loss, and unexpected kindness. I gave it like 3 stars. Like, it's so short, and I feel like it's packing in so much that you can kind of get lost in the weeds with it. The next book I read was also by Fredrik Backman. This one I did do via audio, and it was the sequel to Beartown. It's called Us Against You. And so we're dealing with that small town hockey town that is now having to deal with the fallout from the tragedy. So there is a small town now torn between rivalries and uniforming identities. So again, we're exploring those things of small town community, forgiveness, and resilience. And so a lot of these characters are now struggling with these gaping wounds per se, but they're also trying to heal old wounds, but now they're dealing with these new wounds to their community. So there's a lot of adversity, I feel like, in this story. It's a really powerful one because the characters have to find the bonds that really hold them together when it feels like everything is falling apart. So I really loved this story just as much as I loved Beartown, and I'm just waiting for the third installment, which I think is the last installment of this series, to come through in my library, and I'm looking forward to finishing it out. The next book that I listened to was The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This was a book pick in July, I believe, by Tasha over at Frogate Yarns. Her podcast, Tea, Yarn, and Books. Every month she picks a book club pick, and in July she picked The Rose Bargain. Now, this is another romantasy novel, and it is young adult. I will say that a lot of times young adult, particularly young adult fantasy, can sometimes come across really immature. This was not one of those books. For me, if you like Bridgerton and you sort of like fantasy, I think that you'll like this book. I really enjoyed it. This was like a 4.5 star read for me. It takes place in England, and every citizen of England is granted a wish by their immortal Fae Queen. And so high society girls are expected to bargain for qualities that will eventually win them suitors. So think prettier smile, brighter eyes, that kind of thing. And in exchange, they just usually have to give up, say, a childhood memory. Or maybe you're getting that perfect smile, but you're losing your sense of taste. Just really what some at the time of this bargaining seem minuscule. And so we're following our character of Ivy. It is her debut season in high society, and there's a shocking twist this particular year. There is a competition to secure the heart of the Queen's son, Prince Bram. And she thinks that she will try and free her sister, her older sister, from the bargain that destroyed her older sister. But she doesn't know what that bargain was. So we get to follow along through this high society debut season, sort of like what we do with Bridgerton on Netflix. So it's just very sweepingly romantic. It's enchanting. I don't know, you have glittering it's a really good time. I really enjoyed it. Again, I listened to it, but I really enjoyed this one. It is going to be a duology, so there is a sequel to it, and I will definitely go on with the sequel. I'm just checking. It is called The Thorn Queen, and let's see when it comes out. It's expected to come out April 14th, so we shall see next year what the outcome of that story will be. The next book I read was Count My Lies. This is a really gripping psychological thriller, which is my favorite. I love a good psychological thriller. This one is not very long. This one it's a little over, 322 pages. nice, short-ish thriller, but it is fast-paced. Again, fast-paced psychological thriller. This is my bread and butter. This is going to really just immerse you into this world of secrets and manipulation and suspense. I'm almost at a loss for words. So, this definitely is the type of book that it'll keep you up, and you're gonna want to read it all in one life. So we're following the main character of Sloane, and Sloane is a really good liar. She lies about everything. Like, she feels like the most unreliable narrator ever. And we start out the story with this little girl who's, crying in the park. She goes up to the little girl, who's there with her really handsome dad, and she tells them she's a nurse. She kind of helps, like, with a bee sting or something. And next thing you know, this girl ends up being like the nanny in the home. Like, it is one lie after another. But what really tripped me up about this book is Sloane's not the only one in the story lying. So it's a pretty dangerous book when we start realizing all the key players are lying about something. So this was a really great 5-star read. If you love psychological thrillers and you're like me and you like them fast paced, you definitely don't want to miss out on this one. One of the other books that I listened and read was Husbands and Lovers by Beatrice Williams. This was a solid 4-star book for me. Again, this is one that I tag teams between hardcover and audio. This is a historical novel, which for me, I do a lot better listening to historical fiction via audio. I tend not to wander as much, but this story takes place in a couple different settings. Like, the first setting, it's modern day. I think we're like in 2022, the New England, states. And so we're following Mallory, and Mallory gets this telephone call that her son, Sam, is being airlifted from summer camp. He's ingested this, like, really poisonous mushroom, is what she finds out. And so he ends up living, but is doing dialysis and is waiting on a donor kidney. And now Mallory is also being forced to confront some secrets from her past. She and her sister uncover some secrets from her mom's past and a summer romance from her mom. And so we are transported back to 1951 in Cairo, Egypt. And we're following the story of Hannah, who is actually a Hungarian refugee in Egypt. And we're following these couple of women. And this story, the two women's lives interconnect, they intersect overall in the story. But this one talks about essentially complex relationships, particularly the relationships of women and the choices women make when it comes to love, loyalty, and independence, and how sometimes your past shapes the future. And so for me, this is a story that's really layered because we've got these dueling timelines, but the stories do, of course, intertwine. And so there is some charm to these women, and I think it packs a really emotional punch. There's some depth to this, and there's a lot of secrets that come out that, again, that are about the choices different women made and how that impacts future generations. So this was a really great read. I think it's definitely worth your time. The last book that I read was Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanaugh. This is another psychological thriller. I believe this one is Hitchcock inspired. And it's the story of two basically ordinary women who make this dangerous pact to take revenge for each other, essentially after being pushed to the brink. So we're following Amanda and Wendy. These are two women. They meet in like Upper East Side, no, Upper West Side, New York City. And they realize they have a lot in common, and they're lonely, and they have this really intense desire to seek revenge against the men who have destroyed their families. And so they're talking one night, and they come up with this, what they think is a perfect plan. And basically, I'm going to kill that man for you, and you'll kill this one for me. But we're also following the story of Ruth, and it's in another part of the city, and Ruth is home alone one night, and her home is invaded, and she's attacked by a man, and she eventually frees herself from this scenario. He doesn't successfully kill her. And so she's grappling with ever feeling safe again. And so she and her husband are navigating this. And of course, this is another book where stories kind of collide and intersect. I did listen to this a little bit too. This will keep you on your toes to the very end. There were parts of this story that I didn't see coming. There are a few things you anticipate, but there were parts of it that I was like, what? So definitely another really gripping psychological thriller that I would recommend if you like those types of books. And that'll do it for me. I would love to know, have you read any of these books? Did you have similar opinions, or did you have a differing opinion? I would love to know. And if you made it this far and you don't have an opinion on any of these books, go ahead and give me a book emoji so I know that you made it through to the end. Again, my name is Melissa. You can find me on all the socials as at risingtidefiberco.com, and you can find me on Goodreads and Storygraph as at Macy Boston. So until next time, friends, happy reading.